Hi and welcome back to Heimler's History. It's been too long since we talked about the federal government making America a better place to live. Last time we talked about it, it was called the New Deal under Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In the 1960s, it was called the Great Society, and it was championed by none other than Lyndon B. Johnson. Let's get to it.
It's time to kick it old school.
Now, old Lyndon B. Johnson was a swaggering 6'3" Texan who, upon visiting the Pope for the first time, graciously received a 14th century painting from the Vatican collection, and in return gave the Pope a carved bust of LBJ. I love this guy already. Now, Johnson rolled out a smattering of domestic reforms called the Great Society. And when you think Great Society, you just need to think New Deal Part 2. Now, the two big categories of the Great Society were civil rights, which I talk about in another lecture more extensively, and the war on poverty. So let's look at the four big legislative achievements that fall under these two categories. The first pillar of the Great Society was education. Johnson allocated massive federal funds to schools, including funds for preschool, expansion of school libraries, purchasing school textbooks, and special education services, and all of this especially for low-income areas. The second pillar of the Great Society was medical care for the elderly and the poor. Under this pillar, we got programs like Medicare, which provided medical support for the elderly, and MEDICAID, which provided medical support for the impoverished. And these programs created a system of what is known as entitlements, which is to say that Congress conferred rights on certain groups of people without the need for Congress to reapprove those rights. The elderly and the poor would always receive medical attention by virtue of the fact that they were elderly and poor. Now, the third pillar of the Great Society was immigration reform. Congress passed the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, and that doubled the number of immigrants which could arrive upon our shores. It also threw off the immigration restrictions put in place after World War I, when we were tired of foreigners clogging up our national arteries. And the fourth pillar of LBJ's Great Society was about civil rights. You may recall that black Americans were given the right to vote as a result of the 15th Amendment to the Constitution being ratified in 1865. But in the intervening 100 years, blacks voted in astonishingly low numbers. And the reason why is that because those who were opposed to blacks voting had devised many subtle ways to keep them from the vote. There were poll taxes and literacy tests and straight up intimidation. But as the civil rights movement picked up steam and the American people witnessed on television the horrors of black Americans being leveled to the ground with fire hoses and attacked by dogs, there was an awful lot of national support for the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed literacy tests and sent federal agents into southern states to make sure that the voting was fair all around. Now, conservatives, of course, denounced all of these Great Society tactics as social engineering, and they condemned the billions of dollars that were going down the drain to no effect. Now, whether it was a waste of money or not, I don't know. But the Great Society programs did effect a measurable decline in poverty and a measurable increase of educational performance, especially among impoverished youth. So make of that what you will. I'll see you next time.